I led them with cords of kindness, with the bands of love. And I became to them as one who eases the yoke on their jaws, and I bent down to them and fed them.
Shalom, shalom, folks. This is Brother Tindall from Something to Chew On, coming in once again to do a read-along update and hopefully give you something to chew on. This is something that was revealed to me years back, and I have never forgotten this. And it was kind of a hard truth, a slap in the face, if you will, to grasp and to actually accept this. But let's do the update first, and then we'll get to this nugget of wisdom, if you will. Okay. Last week the vote on hand last week, the winner was Abram or Hebrews. Got that done. I got it all uploaded, and I said that because it was a tie or whatever, that I would go ahead and work on and do Nehemiah. Well, I finished it. I've got it finished. I don't have it uploaded to the YouTube channel yet, but I have all the videos made. So, in between now and next Friday, most high willing, I'll get them uploaded. And it won't take very long. I'll most likely do it. I might do it today, but I'll probably do it in the next 2 or 3 days. I have something potentially in my schedule that may delay me getting it uploaded in the beginning of the week. So it may be closer to, the latter part of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, before I actually get to it. It just depends. I've had a friend ask me if I would do some work in their house, and they may need me, they may not. It just depends. But like I said, either way, most high willing, before next Friday, I will get those videos uploaded. As I said, they're already made. Nehemiah's already made. Okay, with that said, the vote on hand for this week is between, since I've already done 1 Samuel, I'm going to put 2 Samuel on the table, or the book of Esther. So that's your choices this week. 2 Samuel or the book of Esther. And like I say, vote in the comment section below in the YouTube video. Makes sense? So that's the choices. Samuel, Nehemiah, or Samuel or Esther. There you go. And just pause the video, go down there and vote right now so you don't forget. For all those who sometimes forget, just pause the video, go down in the comment section, and vote. There you go. Okay, now with that out of the way, I'm going to try to make this brief, but I'm going to try to explain this. Hang on just a second. Let me get this right. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I'm going to try to explain this in a way that it can be understood. I don't want this to come across the wrong way. But this has come up. This was revealed to me years ago, and like I said, I was like, and the scripture that it comes from, it tells you right there. How does it say it? Where's the verse? Oh, it says, "You would not believe it if you were told." That's one of the key verses in the passage I'm going to read. Okay, but like I said, I'm going to try to frame this. I'm going to try to put this out there in a way that it'll make sense and you can understand what I'm trying to say. Like I said, please don't take this the wrong way. like I said, this is something that a lot of people have never realized, and I often hear it. But I'm going to read this passage. I'm going to read this chapter. It's the first chapter of Habakkuk. So if you have a Bible, by all means, grab a Bible. I'm going to put it on the screen and I'll point it out. There's 2 verses that I actually want to point out, but I want to read the whole thing for the context. And before I begin, I just want to give some context as to Habakkuk and, you know, the book itself and the time frame, the historical context, if you will. Okay, I'll make this simple. This was approximately, you know, you read different commentaries or whatever, and the dates may vary slightly depending on who, you know, what source you see. But we'll go with approximations. The book of Habakkuk was written approximately in 600 BC. Okay, and this is about. Okay, let me say this first. You know, we understand that the kingdom of Israel as a whole, all 12 tribes, split. And so you had the northern kingdom of the house of Israel and the southern kingdom of the house of Judah. Okay, this was written, as I said, in approximately 600 BC. And this was about, we'll say, what? I want to say about 120 years, give or take 120 years after the northern kingdom, the house of Israel, was sacked, sieged, and scattered to the 4 corners of the earth by the Assyrian Empire. This has already taken place. Okay, like I said, about approximately 120 years earlier. Okay, now when Habakkuk writes this, he's referring to the southern kingdom of Judah. And what he writes is approximately 20 years before it actually happens. Does that make sense? Okay, now there's your basic historical context. By all means, you can go read all kind of stuff and they can give you a lot more detail than that, but that's simply enough to understand what I'm going to say. The point I'm going to try to make, this little nugget. Okay, like I said, I'm going to read through this text and I'm going to point out, I'm not going to point out very much. I'm going to just read it so you get it. And then at the end, I'm going to come back and I'm going to explain what I'm talking about. Okay? So let's just start. I'm going to read this today out of the Scripture 2009. By all means, read it out of whatever translation you want. But that's the one I have pulled up. And like I said, I'm going to read through this. I'm not going to comment very much, but there's 2 verses that I'm going to draw on. And that's what I'm going to point out. Okay? So let's go to the text. Bring this up. Like I said, Habakkuk chapter 1. And we're going to start at verse 1 from the Scripture 2009. Okay. This is the message which the prophet Habakkuk saw. Okay. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you this as we start. Verses, let me make sure I had to write all this down so I would get it right. Okay, verses 1 through 4 is basically Habakkuk's prayer or his question. Most often they frame it as Habakkuk's complaint, if that makes sense. You'll see why when we read it. But it's basically his cry to the Most High, okay? Verses 1 through 4. We'll start at verse 1 again. This is the message which the prophet Habakkuk saw. It says, O Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, till when shall I cry, and you not hear? I cry to you violence, and you do not save. Why do you show me wickedness and cause me to see perversity? For ruin and violence are before me, and there is strife and contention arises. Verse 4. Therefore the Torah, or the instructions, what most would understand as the law of God, makes sense? The law of Moses, the instructions of the Most High. Verse 4. Therefore the Torah ceases and right ruling never goes forth. For the wrong hem in the righteous, so that right ruling comes out twisted. Okay. Like I said, those first 4 verses are basically Habakkuk's cry to the Most High. And what he's talking about is he looks out at the nation of the southern kingdom, the house of Judah, and he sees everything wrong. All the wickedness, they're not following the instructions of the Most High. Everything is wrong. And he's crying out, why? And will you do something about this? He's asking the Most High, why is you are allowing this? But ultimately, do something about this. Makes sense? Okay. And then verses 5 through 11 is the Most High's response to Habakkuk. And I want you to listen very carefully to what is said. Okay? Let's go back to the text. Starting at verse 5 right here. Remember, this is the Most High speaking to Habakkuk in response to what he just said. It says, look among the nations and see, and be amazed. Be amazed. For a working is being wrought in your days, which you would not believe if it were told. Let that sink in for a moment. Most High said, there's something happening in your days that you wouldn't even believe it if I told you. You're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you. Meaning the Most High, what he's saying. But this is a message that a lot of people, they don't believe it when this little nugget of wisdom is revealed. It's like they can't wrap their mind around it. They can't accept it. Okay? But let's go back to the text and let's just see all of what he's talking about. What's going to happen that the people that Habakkuk's not going to believe. And we're going to read through this. Okay. So we're going to, right here at verse 6, it says, see. Remember, this is the Most High speaking. See, I am raising up the Ketuvim, or the Chaldeans, the Chaldeans, basically the Babylonians. We'll put it that way. Most people will understand it when I say the Babylonians. That's what it's referring to. Okay, it says, see, I'm raising up the Ketuvim, a bitter and hasty nation, who is going through the breadth of the earth to possess dwelling places that are not theirs. They are frightening and fearsome. Their right ruling and their exaltation proceed from themselves. Meaning they're following their own set of rules. Makes sense? They're not following the rules, the instructions of the Most High. They are following their own rules, their own laws, their own right rulings, right? Proceed from themselves, right here. Okay, verse 8. Their horses shall be swifter than leopards, and more fierce than evening wolves. And their horsemen shall charge ahead, and their horsemen come from afar. They fly as eagle, rushing to eat. All of them come for violence. The direction of their faces is like the east wind, and they gather captives like sand. Verse 10. And they shall scoff at sovereigns or kings. That's the way that this translation translate the word king. Like the King James would say kings, this one says sovereigns. That's what it's basically saying. And they scoff at sovereigns, and princes are laughing, and princes are a laughing matter to them. They laugh at every stronghold, for they pile up earth and seize it. Then shall he pass on as a wind, and transgress and be guilty, and ascribe this power to his mighty one. Now all of that is describing like I said, we'll just call it the Babylonian Empire and their military might and the way they do things. They come in and they conquer. Makes sense? And like I said, back up there in verse 5, the Most High told Habakkuk, there is something happening. There's a work being wrought in your days which you would not believe if it were told. I mean, you're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you. And he told him, he said, basically what he's saying is, I'm going to use the Babylonians and their military might for his purpose. We catch that? Now let's go back to the text. Okay. And the rest of the chapter is basically Habakkuk's response to what was just revealed to him. Okay, so let's go back and read this. We'll start at verse 12. And this is Habakkuk, like I said, Habakkuk's response to what he just heard. It says, are you not from everlasting, O Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, my Elohim, my set apart one? You do not die, O Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. You have appointed them for right ruling. O rock, you have established them for reproof. Now let's just look at that verse right there in the King James. Because I know a lot of people, they would prefer to read from the King James. Let's just see what it says. I'm not even sure exactly how it's worded in the King James, but let's just see what it says. Okay, we'll bring it up, King James. Are thou not from everlasting, O Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, my Elohim, mine Holy One? We shall not die. O Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, thou hast ordained them, meaning the Babylonians, for judgment. We catch that. And O mighty Elohim, thou hast established them for correction. What Habakkuk realized. Well, before I say anything, let's read the rest of this, and then I'll come back, because this is one of the key verses. Let's finish reading this. I'll go back to the scripture 2009. Well, actually, while I'm on the King James, let's just read verse 13, because that's the other key verse. That's, what was it, verse 5, and then verse 12 and 13 are the key verses that I want to point out. And while we got the King James pull up, let's just read verse 13 in there. It said, thou art purer eyes than, thou art of purer eyes than to behold evil, and canst not look on iniquity. Wherefore lookest upon them that deal treacherously, and holdest thy tongue when the wicked devoureth the man that is more righteous than he. We catch that? Okay, now let's read that over in the scripture 2009. We're going to start right here at verse 13. It says, you whose eyes are too clean to see evil, you are not able to look on wrong. Why do you look on those who act treacherously and keep silent when the wrong devours one more righteous than he? And would you make men like fish of the sea, like creeping creatures that have no ruler over them? The wicked foe has pulled all of them up with a hook, caught them in his net, and gathers them in his dragnet. Therefore he rejoices and exalts. Therefore he slaughters to his net and burns incense to his dragnet. For by them, in his portion, fat and his food is rich. Is he therefore to keep on emptying his net and killing nations without sparing? Okay. Like I said, Habakkuk 12 and 13 is what I'm going to point out. Like I said, back up there in, what was it, verse 5? The Most High said, I'm going to do something, or something. There's a work being wrought that you would not believe even if it was told to you. And then he commences to tell him what he's talking about, meaning he's going to use the Babylonians for judgment against the southern kingdom of Judah. We get that, okay? Everybody understands this. They get that the Most High chose, key word right there, the Most High chose the nation of Babylon as his hand of judgment against the southern kingdom of Judah. Let's rephrase that away, that the point will be driven home. The Most High chose wicked, treacherous, and non-righteous Babylon to act as his hand of judgment against the people of the Most High. Do we catch that? Do we see the little nugget that's in there? Let's go back and read verses 12 and 13 one more time, and I'll point this out. Right here in the middle of the verse, Habakkuk, he catches this. And a lot of people, I don't think, actually key in on what he's saying. Habakkuk says, you, as in the Most High, have appointed them, who? The Babylonians, for right ruling. O rock, you have established them for reproof. Now, like I said, what's the King James say right here? O Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, thou hast ordained them, the Babylonians, for judgment. And, O mighty Elohim, thou hast established them, who? Babylonians, for correction. Judgment upon who and correction to whom? The southern kingdom of Judah. The people of the Most High. Like I said. And in verse 13, wicked devour the man that is more righteous than he. We catch that. What Habakkuk is saying, what he realizes in the response that the Most High gave to Habakkuk, Habakkuk realizes that the Most High has chosen, ordained, appointed the wicked Babylonian nation as his hand of judgment and correction against the very people of Most High, of the Most High. And in verse 13, Habakkuk points out that the people of the Most High are more righteous than those of the Babylonian nation. But yet, the Most High has chosen the wicked and non-righteous, we'll just go with that, the non-righteous, unrighteous Babylonians to judge his own people. Let that truth sink in for a moment. Now, here's the part. If you haven't, the little nugget of wisdom to be gleaned from this, if you haven't figured it out yet, I'll put it this way. And like I said, I don't want people to misunderstand what I'm saying. I know I have, and I'm sure there are people out there who have often heard someone say, in reference to a person, a group, a whatever. It doesn't have to apply to a person. It can apply to a corporate group of people or a governmental system like this is being talked about, a nation like this is being talked about. Does that make sense? But this person, this entity, this governmental nation, however you want to refer to it, was chosen by the Most High. That's the key point. But I'll often hear, and I'm sure many of you have heard that, well, he or she or they or that or whatever, they're chosen by God. You hear that so often. They're chosen by God. And I don't know how many times I've had to explain to people, just because the Most High has chosen someone does not necessarily mean that that chosen person, entity, whatever, is righteous. Just because in the long run, that's the key, in the long run, that chosen entity or person is doing the will of the Most High. He's being chosen to bring for a godly purpose, but that does not necessarily make the chosen entity itself a godly entity. Does that make sense? Because whatever was chosen by the Most High does not necessarily make that chosen thing, entity, whatever, righteous or godly. Does that make sense? I'll put it this way. The Most High can use any means he wants to accomplish his purpose. He even chose the wicked Babylonians. But just because the Most High chose the wicked Babylonians does not make the wicked Babylonians righteous. Does not make them good people, if you want to put it that way. Put it in simple terms that we can understand. Just because I'm going to say it like this. Just because God chose someone doesn't mean that person is a good person. Let that truth sink in. You so often hear, well, that's God's chosen one. Okay, great. God chose the wicked Babylonians to accomplish his purpose of judgment, but that does not make the Babylonians themselves godly people. Does not make them righteous. They're still wicked. Just a little nugget of wisdom when you read through the text and you think about it. Okay? And so like I said, in the here and now, put yourself back in the position of Habakkuk and the time that when Babylonians come in to bring forth this judgment and this correction. If you were a citizen of that southern kingdom, you would not see those Babylonians as good, godly, righteous, or whatever. They're coming in and destroying your nation, your way of life, and whatever. But in the long run, it's all for the purpose of the Most High. Judgment and correction. Does that make sense? Now, like I said, don't take this the wrong way. I'll say this. Don't read into this too far and start trying to apply this to, whatever the situation that's going on today. Okay? If you want, go right ahead. But don't think that's where I'm going with this. I'm simply pointing this out because I have seen so many people, ever since this little nugget was revealed to me, I've seen so many people, and they'll say, well, God chose them, or God chose her, or God chose that, whatever it is, whether it be a person, a group of people, a nation, a government, or whatever. It can apply to anything. But people will say, well, God, that's God's chosen. God chose them. Well, just because God chose them don't mean they're godly. Now, granted, they may be bringing about in the long run a godly purpose, but the chosen entity itself does not necessarily have to be godly, righteous. They can be wicked in and of themselves. Does that make sense? Something to chew on right there. A lot of people, they automatically assume because this person, this group, whatever, was chosen by the Most High. They believe in their heart that this whatever was chosen by the Most High. Well, therefore, automatically that whatever was chosen is good. Nope. No, not necessarily. Like I said, the Most High can use any and every means he deems fit. He can even use the wicked Babylonians to serve his ultimate purpose. But the Babylonians themselves are still wicked. Just chew on that for a little while. That's all I got. But I'll say this. Go back and read Habakkuk. It's only 3 chapters. You can read it in 10 minutes. But the last chapter, that's the encouragement. Because in the last chapter, Habakkuk realizes that no matter what seems to be happening in the physical world around us, in the horizontal, if you will, the Most High is still in control, and He is our salvation. And we are to praise and worship Him. So be encouraged. He's still on the throne and He's in charge. No matter what wickedness may be coming to judge and to correct, He ultimately is the one who is in charge. So with that, be encouraged. And I say Shabbat Shalom. And I'll end this video like I end every video. Remember, 2 Samuel or Esther, vote in the comments below. And like I always say, don't just read this thing, but chew on it. Shalom, shalom, folks.